Hey there YouTube, I'm Yukitsu, this is the Yukitsu Times, welcome to my channel, welcome to more Rome 2 Total War. So as you know, there are 3 new factions. These guys are all just minor nomadic factions. It's the Masagate, the Roxolani, and the Royal Scythians. And these guys are all free DLC if you guys got in on that early enough. I'm not sure if that deal is still kicking around, but they're just sort of a few small minor factions. They're all cavalry all the time. In the campaign map, there's some very weak infantry as well, but for the most part, these guys are all about the cavalry. Don't worry too much if you missed them. They're not necessarily all that exciting. They're pretty strong, so be wary of them in the multiplayer matches that you play, but they're nothing too interesting. So I'm going to lump them all into one video, maybe play a battle with each of them, and we'll talk about their units individually. So first off, we've got the Roxolani. I'm talking about these guys first because I feel they're the weakest. I'll go up the ladder up to the most broken. Now, excuse me. The Roxolani are a bit weak compared to the other two simply because the units that they have, they don't have a great variety of units compared to the other ones, and the other ones already have fairly bad unit variety, and the units that they do have aren't particularly strong for what they are. So their general can go on the Sarmatian Royal Lancers and Noble Horse Archers. I prefer putting them on the Sarmatian Royal Lancers, but if you want to keep them safe, Noble Horse Archers is fine. Just keep them in the back and pick away with those bows. Now, the problem with the Sarmatian Royal Lancers, of course, is that they're shot cavalry, which means that your general could get himself into a pretty bad situation if you charge him into a fight that he's probably going to lose. So be careful about that. Moving on to shock cavalry, you've got the Sarmatian Royal Lancers. Now, what makes these guys interesting is that they're a heavy shock cavalry unit, and they've got the expert charge defense, which means that they can win charge exchanges against heavier shock cavalry that don't also have that rule, that special ability, which makes them fairly effective. Their stats are not terribly great, and you're going to look at these and think that they do look pretty good. They're not actually that great for the nomadic tribes. The nomadic tribes all have much stronger cavalry than other factions for their cost, and the Roxolani are no real exception to that. The problem is that the Roxolani don't seem to have the strongest cavalry for their cost compared to the other two. These guys do seem to be their most effective and powerful unit, the Sarmatian Royal Lancers, so they are the unit that I tend to build the most of in my armies here. Next up, they've got the Steppe Noble Lancers. These guys do not have Encourage, and they do not have the counter or expert charge defense ability. So these guys have got a lot missing compared to the Sarmatian Royal Lancers, but their offensive statistics are very similar. So what you can do is use a number of Sarmatian Royal Lancers to charge and countercharge enemy cavalry, and then use the Steppe Noble Lancers to flank those units because they're a little bit cheaper. You don't need that much Encourage, and these guys will do a good hit on the side or whatever, and that'll be an effective way to cause damage. Moving on, we've got the Steppe Armored Lancers. These guys are a light cavalry unit. Now, the problem is they've got 2 light Lancer units, and the Steppe Armored Lancers are not going to really last in any particular fight. So what you want to do is get the Steppe Lancers if you want light cavalry of any sort and save some money, and just use these guys to clear away archers. These guys theoretically are a little bit more durable, so they can clear away more units of elite archers before they get wiped, but typically that's not really all that necessary. You can still use the Steppe Lancers to kill things like the Balearic Slingers or what have you. Moving on, we've got the Sarmatian Horsemen. Now, these guys are not shot cavalry, so they don't have much charge bonus. The problem with these guys is they don't have much melee attack either for their cost. They've got very good melee defense, but their armor and health are not particularly great, so these guys, I feel, are a little bit overcosted for what they can do, especially for a Steppe Tribe cavalry unit. Similarly, Sarmatian Riders, these guys are not as good as the Steppe Lancers because they're a little bit more expensive, and they, simply put, don't have the survivability that you want out of melee cavalry, and to match, they also don't have any really great melee attack benefits. So if you want light cavalry units, I would stick to the Steppe Lancers. The Sarmatian Horsemen can be useful, but if you look at them and then you look at the Steppe Noble Lancers, you can see that the Steppe Noble Lancers actually have higher in-combat melee statistics, so the Steppe Noble Lancers will be doing more damage over that amount of time. The advantage of these guys is that they've got a little bit higher weapon damage and all that melee defense and armor, so they'll be a little bit more durable, but I feel that's not by enough. Moving on to missile cavalry, out of the steppe tribes, out of the nomadic tribes, these guys have the fewest ranged units. They've got the steppe horse archers. Now, as you can see, these guys have heavy shot, which is a new ability they've added to certain bow cavalry. It makes them very effective. It gives you a huge amount of AP armor-piercing damage and increases your damage in general, but it does reduce your accuracy and range. I have not found that those decreases have been really noticeable, so I use that all the time. Other missile cavalry, armored horse archers, similar sort of thing, much more expensive as you can see, but they've actually got decent survivability. It's not great, but it's not terrible either. Compare them to these guys though, I don't think that the armored horse archers are really worth the cost. One of the advantages of them is that if you take armored horse archers instead, you're paying 200 more than the steppe lancers, and you can use these guys in sort of the same capacity. They'll still clean up light units in melee combat just as well, but you've also got that archery unit. So it gives you a little bit of versatility, and can be a little bit cost effective if your opponent's the sort that isn't protecting his missile units very effectively. However, if you just want to output shots, the steppe horse archers are far more effective. Next up, noble horse archers. These guys, again, very expensive. They've got not a whole lot better going for them. I really wish that these more elite archery units had way more arrows or something like that, or higher missile damage, but they just don't. So these guys I similarly take a pass on generally. You can take them again if you want to sort of have a unit that is capable of melee charging units. These guys have got a decent 40 weapon damage with a decent amount of armor piercing, if I recall. Yeah, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. So these guys are pretty decent in a melee fight, but they're not going to really win anything for you. So I generally try and keep them split up into specific ones for melee and specific ones for range. Next up, let's look at the Royal Scythians. Now, these guys, again, are not the strongest. They're probably the second strongest, or right in the middle. And they're very effective, I find, unlike the Roxolani. So your general in the Scythians army can be on a Royal Horse Archer unit. As you can see, these guys are quite a bit better than the noble horse archers. They've got quite a lot more health, armor. Well, actually, I'm not sure they have more armor. Yeah, they have got more armor, okay. And their melee statistics are actually quite decent. So these guys, if you want to have a unit that truly is a melee and range unit, these guys are as close as you're really going to get, but you do pay a lot for that privilege. They've also got the Scythian Royal Skirmishers. These guys, very durable unit again. A lot of defense in melee that's very peculiar for a ranged unit. They've only got 9 ammunition is the big flaw with them, so despite the fact that they have a huge amount of damage for their missiles and a decent amount of melee attack, their actual output of damage is not that great just because they're going to run out of ammunition so quickly. And of course, they've also got some problems in melee with their actual attack damage. So these guys, I don't tend to like them just because they run out of ammo too fast, so I stick to archers. Next up, the Scythian Royal Horse. This is a melee cavalry unit, not a shot cavalry unit. As you can see, they've got expert charge defense, and they've got fairly decent stats all around. They're very durable, a lot of armor. Their melee defense is okay. It's not great for a melee cavalry unit, but it's not bad either. And combined with the expert charge defense, these guys can really tank up a lot of really heavy shot cavalry charges and do a very good job there. So if you're going to pick a unit for your general, I would pick the Scythian Royal Horse. That's just sort of the most stable version. You could also put him in the Royal Horse Archers and avoid putting him in combat. Next up, we've got the Shot Cavalry. Now, these guys have the exact same Steppe Noble Lancers. These guys are, again, really quite good. They're very efficient for their cost. They're just an all-around great unit to have quite a bit of. So they're a good unit to have as the Scythians. Now, the Scythians only have the steppe armored lancers for their light cavalry, unlike the other light cavalry that you had access to with the Roxolani, which means that these guys have a very sort of effective but expensive middle tier shot cavalry unit and no low tier armored cavalry unit. For that purpose, I actually use my ranged cavalry, because they can actually clear away skirmishers very effectively. Even the steppe horse archers can defeat an archery unit that's on foot just because of the momentum of the charge will break through a lot of the archers. So for these guys, I would give the steppe armored lancers a pass, just like I would give it a pass with the Roxolani, and I would instead use missile units. Now, the Scythian Royal Horse is sort of what makes these guys a decent faction. Unlike the Roxolani and their melee cavalry, the melee cavalry for the Scythians is probably the best out of the three. And they synergize really, really well with the Steppe Noble Lancers. What I like to do is I have the Scythian Royal Horse. I have like 4 or 5 units of them, and I catch the enemy charges on the Scythian Royal Horse by countercharging them. And then I move my Steppe Noble Lancers around to the flanks and charge them into the sides and rear. Because the Scythian Royal Horse isn't going to take a whole lot of damage against a cavalry charge when they're being charged by shock cavalry or cataphracts or anything like that. So that makes these guys really quite effective in that capacity. Next up, we've got Missile Cavalry. As you can see, that the Scythians have a lot of Missile Cavalry to choose from, which is a shame, because all I ended up really picking is Steppe Horse Archers all the time, because they're the best. You can use the Steppe Horse Skirmishers. They've got a lot of damage at 33, that's not bad at all, and then combined with the precision shot, they can do quite a bit of damage. The problem with that is that these guys just don't have enough ammunition. 9 ammunition is not enough for these guys. They need more. They run out and then they can't do anything. The Steppe Horse Archers do a similar amount of damage. They can use that heavy shot to actually do more damage than them, and they've also got the Parthian shot, the firewall moving. Well, I think they both have firewall moving, but they've got the Parthian shot and they've got that better range. So these guys, you know, with more ammunition, 6 more shots with the Steppe Horse Archers, they're just much better for their cost. Armored Horse Archers and Noble Horse Archers, the same as the Roxolani. I don't particularly find them that useful, but they have their niche. The one that's different is the Royal Horse Archers. Now, these guys, if you take several of them, are really expensive, and you're really going to suffer elsewhere if you do it. But they've got really decent melee statistics, armor, and health. These guys can actually hold out pretty darn well against other cavalry units or against infantry units. And in a rear charge against infantry, these guys can actually put down quite a lot of hurt compared to other types of your missile cavalry. So they're a strange option. I haven't really found any particular use of them, but I really think that there probably is something that you can do with that. And I think that that'll probably come about after experimentation. But for now, I think to keep in mind that these guys are a unit that you can sort of use after they've depleted all their ammunition. They can actually charge in and you can expect them to do something. Scythian Royal Skirmishers, it's sort of the same thing. The only problem is, again, 9 ammunition, they cost more than the Royal Horse Archers. They're not really any better than the Royal Horse Archers, other than the fact they've got much, much higher melee defense at the cost of weapon damage and melee attacks. So these guys, very peculiar unit. Again, I would give them a pass. Now, the last faction is the Masagete. These guys, I think, are actually by far the strongest of the steppe tribes, out of the sort of nomadic tribes here. Their generals come in Noble Horse Archers, which are the same as everybody else's, Saka Cataphract Horse Archers, and these guys are really, really good. They've still got that heavy shot, they've got 90 armor, 85 health, they've got really decent melee statistics as well, but they're very expensive. So you pick, obviously, this general. There's no reason to get the Noble Horse Archer general. If you're going to get an Archer general, get the Saka Cataphract Horse Archers for him. They're a much better protected unit, and they're not much more expensive. Next up, you've got the Saka Noble Armored Lancers, and you'll notice right away that these guys a little bit more expensive, 70 more expensive than the Roxolani shock cavalry, but they're way better statistics-wise. These guys are absolute monsters, because look at that melee attack. That's 47. That's higher than a lot of melee cavalry on a shock cavalry unit that's also got a very good charge bonus. They've even got, you know, pretty moderate melee defense. It's not as terrible as a lot of others. So these guys, absolutely tough, really good stats. But then you go even further. If you want to have your general in a shock cavalry unit, this is the one you put him in. He's got tons of health, 105 health as a cataphract unit. He's got 90 armor. His melee defense is 31 on a shock cavalry unit, and he's got 51 melee attack. These guys are absolute monsters. And the ability to take a few of these Saka cataphracts is the thing that really makes the Masagete really dominant compared to the other ones, in my opinion. One of these Saka cataphracts can easily destroy like a Parthian cataphract unit. They're just that much stronger, and they've got that expert charge defense as well, as do the Saka Noble Armored Lancers. They both have the expert charge defense. Makes them really, really good in cavalry engagements. So going over their units, you can see that these guys are even more limited in a certain sense, but that doesn't really matter. They don't have any melee cavalry. Instead, what they have is shock cavalry that has melee cavalry statistics. And that's just so strong. Like these guys don't need the Steppe Noble Lancers, no matter how efficient the Steppe Noble Lancers are. They can use the Saka Noble Armored Lancers instead. That's just such an efficient, powerful unit that they're really, really effective. I like them quite a lot. So when you're designing an army with the Masagete, The problem that a lot of people are going to have is that they're going to say the Saka cataphracts are absolute best, blah, 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 which they are. But the problem is that if you make an entire army full of them, you're not going to have a particularly large army. You're only going to have 11 units, and that's pretty catastrophic if you're up against somebody who knows how to use numbers to their advantage. The thing that makes these guys strong is the ability to then sort of fill that in with these Saka Noble Armored Lancers. In fact, I take mostly Saka Noble Armored Lancers and just take the one Saka Cataphract for my general, typically. Maybe I take some more Saka Cataphracts if I want to, but you know, you can fill out quite a decent sized roster just by using lots and lots of these Saka Noble Armored Lancers and fill it in with archers, and then you've got the cataphracts. All that combined sort of gives you incredible punch compared to the others, and surprising longevity in combat as well. So that's what sort of makes the Masagate really powerful. Now the Steppe Noble Lancers, the Steppe Armored Lancers, and Steppe Lancers are all sort of the same for them as they are for the other factions. Strictly speaking, you know, the Steppe Lancers would still be good against other types of light infantry, but I prefer to sort of focus more on the Saka Noble Armored Lancers and then fill in the light cavalry role with Steppe Horse Archers. For archery, they've got the Saka Cataphract Horse Archer is their only unique one. Again, for the filling in the file and rank, I just use the Steppe Horse Archers generally. The Saka Cataphract Horse Archers, I'm pretty sure, have their uses, but they're just too expensive for an archery unit. And they're not good enough to justify using them as a melee unit, in my opinion. I'd rather either take, you know, 2 Steppe Horse Archers to get twice as many arrows, so I'm less likely to have to commit my bow units to a charge, or I would rather take another unit of these Saka Noble Armored Lancers and be able to much more decisively punch through in melee combat. So I very much focus these armies on one task units, and then mix it up by having combined arms instead of using the go-betweener units, which these Saka Cataphract Horse Archers are. Anyway, let's look at these guys in the campaign map here. Got the nomadic tribes here. As you can see, got the Roxolani. All these guys have nomadic tribe traits of Horde, +2 army recruitment capacity in home province, which helps them recruit tons and tons of cheap units really quickly. And they've got Marauder, +10% income from raiding and sacking. So these guys can blow up towns and get a lot of money from it, but I still don't necessarily know that it's worth it very often. Nomadic encroachers for the Roxolani, major diplomatic penalties with all nomadic factions. So these guys end up in wars with a lot of people. They've got migrant traders, +5% wealth from all commerce buildings. Peregrine conquerors, +10% melee attack during battles in foreign territory. So this is a very effective, aggressive ability, Peregrine conquerors. Migrant traders, and the bonus feels too small to me to make it really worthwhile. And the nomadic encroachment just means that you're going to have to kill all of the other local nomadic tribes, which isn't too bad since it lets you conquer and take over places. Next up are the Royal Scythians. They've got Scythian craftsmanship, +10% wealth from all industrial buildings. They've got Hellenic enmity, major diplomatic penalty with all Hellenic factions because these guys dislike the Greeks. And then they've got archery masters, +1 experience rank for archer recruits, and that includes their horse units. So these guys can get a huge amount of bow archers, horse archers, and just kite things around the battlefield. Lastly, you got them Sagate. These guys have Eastern enmity. They've got major diplomatic penalty with all Eastern factions, and they've got pastoral lifestyle, +20% wealth from livestock buildings, which is really good, and fierce independence, +10% melee defense for all answering battles in own or allied territory, which I think is less useful than the Roxolani one, but that's made up for a little bit by the pastoral lifestyle. So in case you didn't notice, all of these guys have enmity with somebody, and that's because these guys tend to raid their local neighbors, so whatever's around them they tend to attack and raid and conquer, so they're not really on good terms with anybody. Now, for all of these guys, you're going to have a rough start just because all of your units are garbage, but you have to rely heavily on this Horde ability that they get that gives you 2 extra army recruitment. That just lets you sort of spread out your forces really quickly, gives you a very large army base very quickly compared to what you would normally do. And hopefully you'll be able to break through enemy provinces quickly. One of the biggest problems that you're going to have with these guys is that they just don't really have any great way to take over enemy fortified villages. So you're going to want to do something to avoid those or to bypass those or to starve them out if you possibly can. Anyway, that's my look at these guys for now. I might look at them in the campaign map a little bit more, but honestly, I don't personally find any of these factions interesting in the campaign map, and it's just personal preference, but I just dislike the fact that all of them are so limited in these types of units that they can get, and I personally like using a lot of infantry, so I didn't really get far enough into the campaign with any of these factions to really have a definitive say of how I would play them in the campaign map, so I'll leave that up to you to figure out. If you happen to be interested in these factions, maybe tell me how that worked out for you and I can try that. But for me, it's just not a style that I'm really familiar with or really happy playing. Anyway, let's get into the battle map. Okay, welcome to the battle map. As you can see, I've chosen the Roxolani for this demonstration. Not a very fun faction because they're all just sort of cav spam factions. Not really that interesting, but it is what it is. So we're going to go set up our main melee line of cavalry here. Gonna basically have our archer groups split into two, since there's just too many archers for me to handle if they're all in one group. So let's get the rest of them over here. And let's get ready to rumble. Let's actually switch these to heavy shot first, since I want to be making sure I'm firing all heavy shots. So we're up against the Slew Kids. They're a faction that I think is a little bit underpowered in general, but let's get going here. The way you sort of play these guys is that you sort of use your tremendous range skirmish potential to try and wear down your opponent up until he's out of troops, and you typically want a lot of open space to do this in. And if your opponent's just gonna fight to you, it's usually just gonna be them in a noob box absorbing arrows. And if they do this, what's probably gonna happen is you're gonna end up with a draw, since there's no real reason to charge it if they have too many troops for you to break with your bow fire, or you break their bow fire and sort of charge in. So it's playing for a draw is basically what they're doing at that point. So let's move our troops up and get ready for some intense skirmishing. If they've brought a lot of missiles, it's actually a good idea to drop your units in Cantabrian Circle. It seems to make a big difference, or it feels like it does. I'm not positive, but we'll have to see in more deliberate unit testing. The thing that does do to you is that it does decrease your actual rate of fire quite a bit. So it looks like my opponent's just got like all Hellenic cataphracts. So he's countering my horse spam that he knew about with his own horse spam. I'm going to actually just kite them around a little bit because there's no real reason for me to fight this before I've whittled down his forces quite a bit.
Step archers! Get running! Move it!
Okay, so the heavy shot actually makes these pretty powerful bows, and you'll actually wear away at these sort of heavy cavalry units pretty darn quickly. And since I'm using the light horse archers, they're actually a bit faster than my opponent's cavalry here, so I should be able to keep away pretty effectively, so long as I keep issuing proper move orders. So as you can see, it's already starting to take a few losses, despite the fact that he's got this really heavy cavalry. Okay, so he split his forces in two. I'm going to try and lure some of them over towards that cavalry while I keep the other half busy. As you can see, he's taking some more losses here. Uh-oh. So it looks like he's caught up with some of them. But at the same time, we're getting into a more general engagement over here. Oops. Shoot. Okay, so some of my archers over here got caught, but that's because my attention was drawn elsewhere. Definitely worthwhile, since we're definitely going to be able to take out all these, oops, oh well. All the cavalry over here. not much of a problem. Let's get our general to use some of his abilities. I forgot to switch it to the right thing, so now it's on the wrong thing, which is not good.
Step archers!
So these two units over here, they're going to get trounced, but that's okay. We're just about through the general of the general ball here that my opponent's got, and that will be very good. Okay, so let's get our units sort of spread out here. Let's get one unit, let's get our general unit, just right in the front there, and then get the rest sort of flank around. As you can see, my micro is kind of slipping on one of the fronts, but we're definitely ahead here. Let's see here. Okay, so then we've managed to win that one. So our opponent thought that he could counter our cav spam by using his own cav spam, but since he didn't take any ranged ones, I was able to kite his units around, isolate them, and then kill them one at a time. So as you can see, the cataphract units are not necessarily a good counter to this style of army, but you do want to use cavalry. It was what let him catch some of my horse archer units. Anyway, that's a look at the Nomad factions in multiplayer battle. What you're going to encounter most of the time is either just your opponent takes a lot of cav as well, or they take a noob box and you get a draw. Either way, really boring in multiplayer, not exactly a fun faction to play as. The Masagate are just the same thing but more powerful, and the Scythians, you sort of have to rely on slightly different tactics since you don't have that same shock value, but you've got those excellent Royal Scythian horse men. This was actually the match before. My opponent had a very suspicious looking army setup. It looked like this, and actually had some chevrons of experience. So the curious thing about that is, as you can see, that exceeds funds settings. So, you know, I'm not entirely sure what was going on with that. But anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope to see you all next time.